So we're on page Chof Gimel, in middle of chapter Yud Zayin 17. So to recap what we learned yesterday, in this chapter in Perek Yud Zayin, the Alter Rebbe begins his conclusion of his Beinani doctrine, let's call it that. Now, although when I say he concludes, the entire first chelik of the 53 chapters is geared towards the Beinani, towards the average person, the potential person. But nevertheless, from chapter 12 through 17 are the 5 chapters where he really gets into the guts of what the Beinani is and what's the objective of the Beinani and various forms of Beinani. So 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 6 chapters. So what did we learn yesterday? So we learned that given the tagline, the mission statement of Tanya was on the title page, a pasuk in Pashas Nitzavim, Ki korev elecha adav miyoy beficha uvelvavcha lasoisa. For this thing is close to you in your mouth, in your heart, and to act upon it. What is hadavar miyoy? Rashi says Torah mitzvahs, all of Torah mitzvahs, and Hashem is telling us that we should know that Torah and mitzvahs observance is close to us, as close, and not only close to us, korev miyoid. It's very close to us, meaning it's close to us and closer than even gashmius, material matter, life. And that is such a heavy statement and one that needs clarification, because seemingly, as the Alter Rebbe uses these beautiful words on page 44, the third line of in the chapter 17, neged chush shelanu. It's contrary to our chush, to our reality. The Alter Rebbe, this big tzaddik, knows that for the human being as created by Hashem, to say that Torah mitzvahs is close to you and very close to you is enigmatic. It's like, and then he added in a bracket. You see the brackets there at the end of that third line on page 44. On V'haTorah nitzchis, and Torah is eternal. And we discussed yesterday why he needed to add that, and basically it is to tell us that even though this pasuk is not a tzivui, it's not a command, it's not about commandments, it's a sipur ba'alma. It's God telling us a story. What's the story? The script. It's the script. What's the script? The script is a Torah mitzvah is close to you guys. And therefore, and lo b'shamayim he, the verse continues, lo be'evrayam yoini, it's not in heaven, it's not across the sea, you don't got to take a plane and a ship, and you don't have to endanger yourself. It's right there, right now, in each and every one of ours, a house or apartment, sitting and learning together. It's right here. The Alter Rebbe says, v'haTorah nitzchis. Even this script, this story, is eternal. Because you would think that a mitzvah is eternal. That I get. As the Rambam writes, if anyone changes an iota of what it says in the Torah, it's a violation, a breach in the 13 principles of faith, Yud Gimel Ikrei Emunah. But as far as the stories of Torah, the Sipur Ba'alma, what's the big deal? In Moshe's generation, it was a reality because they were more spiritual, more ruchnius, right? So Moshe, when Hashem communicates to Moshe Avram, this pasuk in Pashas Nitzavim, you would argue, for his generation, there's people, they were more ruchnius, they weren't interested in gashmius, they were interested in ruchnius, so it makes sense. But for us, for every generation following Moshe, or many generations, many people, no, it's not that way. It says the Alter Rebbe here in Tanya in chapter 17, no, wrong. And this is an overall theme that the Alter Rebbe plants in Tanya, and Rabbi Yoel by Shpia pointed this out to us several times. In the name of the Rebbe, I mean, as the Rebbe explained different things over 42 years of his talks, that anything that's in Torah is reality. And that's why the Alter Rebbe will this isn't the only time. Later in chapter 41, he says something similar about Torah Omeris. Of course, what do you have to say about Torah Omeris? Who else says it? Shakespeare. Torah Omeris. Just say what the verse is. If you're quoting a verse from the Torah, you don't have to say, and the Torah says. Just quote the verse. And the same over here. Why does he have to make up a point? And Torah is everlasting. Duh. Like, oh really? So the answer is because the Alter Rebbe emphasizes and teaches us a hidden lesson, and a very important lesson, that every aspect in Torah, from law to story, is eternal and is relevant to us today. And that's why the Alter Rebbe says it here in Tanya. It's relevant to every Yid that is a potential Beinoni, anytime, every time, even after Mashiach's coming. After Mashiach's coming, we'll also be learning the Tanya, like we'll be learning the Gemara. It's a shallow understanding of Torah that when Mashiach comes, and we'll be involved in God's knowledge, which means Pnimius HaTorah, the esoteric aspects of Torah. It doesn't mean that we're not going to learn Halacha, Gemara. We're going to learn the inner meaning of Halacha and Gemara. First, you have to learn the Gemara to be able to understand its inner meaning. Excuse me. So anyway, this was what he said on page 44. Then on page Chav Gimel, where we're at in the middle of the page, the Alter Rebbe introduced the idea that how is it? So what's the answer? How is it close to us? So he says, Kol mish yeshle, the second line of Chav Gimel, sheyeshle moyach bekat kodai, as long as you have a brain in your head, ki moychai b'reshusai, for your brain, your intellect is within your domain and ability to make cognitive changes. V'yochel is boinen boy, and to contemplate on it. Kechol asher yechbotz, as much as you would like, in regard to God's greatness. In other words, don't tell me that you can't use your head. You can. You're lazy. If you're lazy, that's not an excuse. If you tell me that your brain doesn't get it for whatever reason, and there are such situations, I can excuse you. But the average person has moyach b'kot kodeh in a regular, normal way, in a way that's fine. Now, I want to make myself clear. God forbid to think that if Hashem created someone with an issue, a cognitive issue, that it's not according to the plan. It's 100% according to the plan. And as we know from different studies, those that have cognitive disabilities could get to the truth more than those that don't, because they see it without the cover-ups, without the facade, without the build-up, right? And that's why there's been studies, case studies in Eretz Yisrael and other places about autistic children, autistic people, that many times they say things and feel things that are right on, because there isn't the Hagbola, the limitation of the intellect, which challenges and dissects and questions. But nevertheless, that's kind of an exception. That's min hashamayim, and very important to understand that and to respect it and to work with it. And I could say Baruch Hashem that there's been such a great improvement in this area in the Jewish community all over the world, where there's so much available for people with cognitive issues. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Dalfin, I'm sorry to come back to this, but I'm just, as you're speaking, I'm looking at the English translation. I'm using I'm going back to this, that the Alter Rebbe says this language of like, and it is very easy for any person who has brains in his head. I'm having, I guess, I as I looked at that again, I'm just struggling to understand why would the Alter Rebbe use that particular language? Meaning, it seems like we know that the Alter Rebbe was so particular about every single word that he wrote in the Tanya. That seems like a very flippant sort of way to speak. I'm sure he didn't mean it that way, but I guess what I'm asking you is, I'm going back to it. I'm saying, like, I don't understand, why is the Alter Rebbe speaking this way? Like, obviously everybody has brains in their head. So I just don't understand why is the Alter Rebbe using this particular language?
Okay, it's a good question, and the Alter Rebbe is using it because we're dealing with someone who's looking for an excuse, he says, I cannot do this. The Alter Rebbe says, basically, he's saying, you're a liar, okay? He has to confront the person. And guess what? It's us. At different times. Don't give me your cockamamie excuses. Use your brains. Yeah, Moshe. So the Alter Rebbe has to be very, very, very sharp. Otherwise, you don't get it. The Rebbe once spoke a sikha, by the way, and it's printed in Likkutei Sichos, and it's online in English, and it's worth learning and reading. By Noach, right? It says, Tahira, the animal that's kosher, and the animal that's eineno Tahira. Why doesn't the Torah say, take into the teva the kosher animals and the non-kosher animals? Wouldn't that be clear? It's like, here, my ear, this ear, my left ear, right, itches me. So instead of going like this, I go like this. Use your left hand to itch your left ear. Why do you use your right hand? It's kosher and it's not kosher. No, it's kosher. I'm sorry, it's kosher and it's treif. No, it doesn't say that. The kosher ones and the ones that are not kosher. And the Rebbe explained how careful your language has to be. That the Torah didn't want to say treif. So then the Rebbe asked on himself, but we find in other parts of the Torah where it says puzzle and not, and treif and all that. So the Rebbe explained, when it comes to halacha, bottom line, you have to make it as crystal clear. In Parshas Noach, which was the story of the ark and the teva Noach, it's not halacha l'maisa. Later, when it talks about the animals that are kosher and not kosher, in Parshas Shmini, over there clearly it says treif. Why? Because there's no room for this, because someone will walk away with this instead of, hey, this is not kosher, finished, it's treif. And using that, Moshe, as an example to support what the Alter Rebbe says here and to answer your question, which is a good question, and that is, what's the answer? Yes, he has to tell you, you have money. Yeah, in other words, I understand. It's like it feels like he's belittling the person. That's what's bothering you. And the answer is the person's belittling himself. And the person's putting up a blockage. And there's no way to get through this person. I'm sorry. It's just so over here there's no room for negotiations. 1 second, Yoini. And the same is with your Arab neighbors. There's no room for negotiations. It's gedreit hakop. Okay? And yes, and Meir Kahani had it right. And not that I'm a kachnik and all that. But, and I'm not saying you should go and kill everyone. But this is our country. And you want to bother us, you're gonna pay for it. That's it. You have your place. God gave us this Torah. It has nothing to do with the 6-Day War and the 48. That's all natural phenomena. First Rashi, Bereshis Bara Elokim, look in Rashi, God gave us the land. God took the land. That means God gave it to us first. It belongs to us. That's it. You want to be a mensch? You want to ask for us to help you? We'll be more than glad to help you. There are times, Moshe, when you have to confront the situation, and if you beat around the bush, it's going to be a greater mess. Now, the Rebbe here in this chapter has to employ what seems like a belittling statement, as you say, whoever has brains in his head, especially in English, it sounds terrible. In Hebrew, Moshe, you can get away with it. Yeshle moyach bekat kadei. But when you translate it in English, you're right. It sounds so degrading. And the answer is because we're dealing with a degrading situation. Someone who uses excuses to go against Torah and mitzvahs and be a jerk. Excuse the expression. Yes, Yoni.
So, just a little bit, going back a little bit, when we're talking about somebody is, let's say, lazy or creating blockages, where would, unfortunately, we live in 2023, we don't live in times like that. We have different situations, a lot of trauma, a lot of people with trauma, and a lot of this mishigas with the trans movement and all this. And you see, I don't have to tell you, here in Beit Shemesh, the kids, the B'nai Noar, it's a chorban, Rebbe, it's a chorban. And it's happening in Haredi homes, it's happening in Dati Leumi homes. It's mamish, like, I don't even know, like, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to, implement what we're learning to help the kids, to help the next generation? Because we didn't grow up with this stuff. This stuff is now, it's new age, whatever. It's much, much worse.
Yeah. And it's real, and it's happening. And I don't want to say, and I don't think it's the case that it's too late. It's not too late, but it requires. You talk about. I'm writing about Agudas Yisrael now and Chabad. It requires the Aguda, meaning I don't mean the organization, Klal Yisrael, to get together and create a system of education where parents and the youth, the B'nai Noar, as you say, there's a talking and working relationship. There's a talking and working relationship between educators and students, institutions and students, not kicking out boys and girls and things like that. And I know they're tough situations. And I know, Baruch Hashem, there are many new yeshivas and girls' schools and smaller schools, which is all great. And then this has to be really looked at an earlier age, maybe even in elementary school. As soon as a parent, an educator, detects in a young man or a young woman, a boy or a girl, feelings of that they're not a male or a female and things like that, there needs to be a system within the yeshiva world and in the girls' world, school world, of psychologists and therapists and the rebbes and the mechanchos, the teachers, women teachers, have to be trained how to deal with this. And the answer is not to say you're a shegitz, to say you're a misfit. Okay, at the same time, I saw, and maybe I shouldn't, I saw some woman talk show. I don't want to mention the name. And she gave it to this transgender movement. She isn't Jewish. So the fact that there are goyim that are against this is very good. In other words, there has to be a on one hand, this forceful, God's approach vis-a-vis Torah and religion and humanity, that a male is a male and a female is a female. At the same time, if a person has an issue, they need to be helped. I remember the Rebbe spoke about this issue wasn't trans. It was with gays in the, one time he spoke about it at a public Farbrengen, I believe, in the 1980s, 83, 84. And the Rebbe didn't squash the person. The Rebbe said, if they have a psychological need, you need to help them. We know what the Torah says, but the fact is that there are people who feel this way, and we need to help them. How that's done is another issue, and unfortunately, there's disagreements, and I can understand the disagreements, but somehow, when you start disagreeing and the youth sees this, then they find that as a legitimate reason for them to continue their behavior. We do have to go on, and Tanya, I'd love to talk about it more. Maybe we'll have a Farbrengen, and we could talk about it more. So it is a serious issue, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Yaini. And, we spoke about the blockages, but here we're talking about a person who's looking to serve Hashem, and I guess this would apply to that too. In other words, through being mekarev, these individuals, you could help them. The problem that we're facing, Yaini, as you know, is that there's an entire groups that have been formed and created to legitimatize this behavior and these thoughts. So whereas in our time, growing up, if you had 1, 2, whatever, it was the exception to the rule. No one said it's acceptable. But now on CNN the other day, a talk show, there's a woman and there's a man, I tell you this, and he says, oh yeah, my husband said so-and-so. I mean, millions of people see it. My husband said so-and-so, he's a male talking. I mean, this has become the norm, and it's very, very hard because it's been legitimized. And now, what happened, I think, in Eretz Yisrael, wasn't it an Orthodox singer came out and said that he's, what is he, gay or trans? Whatever. I mean, and people have actually communicated with me about this issue. Like, it's a very, very difficult issue. Very, very difficult issue, The fact is, you see in the Gemara, Avram, that there is a tumtum and an androgynous. You know what tumtum and androgynous are? What they call today trans. So in other words, Issa, why are you laughing?
I'm not laughing. I disagree. A tumtum and an androgynous is a bria from the Ribbono Shel Olam.
I understand. I know that.
And what people are doing now with this trans stuff is they're creating their own fantasy.
I understand.
That's detached from reality.
I agree. I understand. I understand. What I meant to say is that tumtum and androgynous of the Gemara, for the Orthodox ones and the frum ones, the ones who learn the yeshiva, it gives them some legitimacy. And I understand that there's a basic difference. It's a ridiculous argument. All I'm saying is that this is what's happening today, whereas once upon a time, it was clear. When I learned in the Gemara as a 15-year-old of tumtum androgynous, it didn't enter my mind that there are people that want to be tumtum and androgynous walking around the streets of Borough Park and Crown Heights and Flatbush. It was in Mir Yeshiva, and Chaim Berlin, and Lubavitch Yeshiva, all of us in Flatbush. It was like now, I don't know how it was for you guys in college and high school, in Chicago or wherever, in LA, maybe it was different. I don't know. Could be it was different. But in the 1970s and 80s, I never heard of anyone saying, Chaim, I saw a tumtum androgynous walking on the street. I never heard such a thing. So, whatever. Anyway, bottom line is, I don't have the solution. There's a lot of mishagas. So on one hand, we have to be strong. I said Meir Kahana, every Jew at 22, it's our land. On the other hand, the implementation and the way was debated and questioned. And some will say, hey, look, Meir Kahane was right. Look at the mess we have today. Look at the taxes that we have to pay because we have to, defend ourselves, And if we would have in 67 made, hey, you guys crossed the line, you're all dead. Not just one. We wipe out, an entire village. No, there'll be a different, But no, concessions, right? I remember the Rebbe speaking, I think it was the early 80s when we went into Syria, and the Rebbe said, go to Damascus. And, they didn't. They were in Damascus. Stayed, the Rebbe wanted that they should, not to conquer Syria. It's no chiyuv to conquer Syria. That wasn't his point. His point is show you tough. Show what you're made of. You start up with us, and we're going to hang around here. You won't be able to move. We're going to make your life very uncomfortable. So just behave yourself, Okay, let's learn a few more lines. Okay, so now turn to page Chav Gimel. So the Alter Rebbe said that Moach Shalat Alev, the mind can control the heart and the actual heart, not just the tools and instruments of the heart, unless it's like 8-9 lines on the top. Im loy mishu rosha be'emes. Unless someone's really a rosha. Kamay merazal, sharashoyim heim bereshus libim. That same medrash that he brings earlier regarding tzaddikim controlling their heart, the medrash says the flip side is that the wicked people, the rashoyim, their heart controls them. Heim bereshus libim. Ve'ein libam b'reshusam klal, and their heart is not at all controlled by them in their control. V'zeu einish al goydel v'oitzim avoinam, and this is the punishment and the great punishment for their sins, for these rishoyim. V'leidibra Torah b'meisem melu, the Torah doesn't talk about these dead people, these dead ones, shebechayim kruyim mesim, because the Chazal say Rishoyim, even while they're alive, are called dead. So the Alter Rebbe is citing that Gemara. Ki b'emes yefshel Rishoyim lahaschel laved Hashem. For in truth, it is impossible for wicked people to start to serve God. B'lisha yasa tshuva ala avar tchila. Before doing tshuva, Yaini. So this is like also a very, very, Moshe, a very strong statement, which is a true statement. You got to stop doing your Vedas. You don't stop doing Avedas first. Your approach to God is not good. Sur Meira comes first, then Vasei Toiv. L'shabrik HaKlippa is continuing. You have to break the negative forces and extraneous matters. Shemesach Mavdil, which is a separating curtain. Number 2, it's even more isser than a curtain. It's Mechitza Shel Barzel. It's a partition of Barzel, of iron, Hamafsekes Beinom, that separates the people, the Rishoyim, La'avim Shebeshmayim, to their Father in heaven. And how do you break that? That's the reality. So the way to break this klippa, this curtain and this mechitza, is through shviras libay. You have to shatter your heart, a contrite heart. Umerida is nafshe, and frustration of the soul, al chatoev, that I sinned. I'm frustrated, not depressed, but it really bothers me that I spend so much time in this world of nonsense, etc. Because of Bezoyar, like the Zoyar writes, al posik, there's a verse in Tehillim, Zivchei Elokim, the slaughterings that you give to God, it consists of Ruach Nishbara, a contrite heart, Leiv Nishbar, and a broken heart. Shal Yedei Leiv Nishbar, Nishbara Ruach HaTumah. When this Rasha Moshe will break his heart, meaning stop doing the bad and do Sur Meirah, this will automatically crack and break the spirit of folly, the negative energy, the klippus, the Sitra Achra. Ayin Shom Pashas Pinchas Daf Rish Mem, Pashas Vayikra Daf Cher Daf Hey, Omdalo Feish Ramah Shom. He gives you the citations to the Zohar. Vehi. Okay, we'll stop here, and tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, we'll continue to finish the Pedic. Everyone have a great day. Zeit gesund. Shalom. Bye.